Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're really excited to jump into this topic with PPO advisors and Shelley here to dive into the insurance side of things. And of course, here at CareStack and Darby, we hear lots of questions about insurance and how that incorporates what you do every day in your practices that you're in. So this presentation is brought to you by the three of us, CareStack, Darby, and PPO advisors. And my name's Janina. I'm here with CareStack tonight. I will turn it over to Shelley and let her get started. And thank you so much for your time.
Perfect. Thank you guys for having PPO advisors here. We're so excited to be a part of this great team. We love what you guys are doing over at CareStack. There just isn't a better program, practice management software, all in one for the providers out there in those offices that are wanting to do better. So we're super excited to be working with CareStack and really excited to be here today. All right, with that being said, I'm going to jump into what our topics are today, and I'll go through this as quickly as I can because there's always a lot of questions. We're going to field all of the questions to the very end of the presentation, and then I will be on for Q&A, and we'll take that on as long as it goes, and Kelsey will be monitoring those, but if there's something urgent, type that into Kelsey and she can stop me, and I will address your immediate question if there's something you really want answered right away. So we'll get going here. I am Shelley. I am the founder and owner of PPO Advisors. I started in this industry I graduated from the University of Nebraska, and I had no intentions of going into dental whatsoever. My degree is in ag. And with that, I landed a great job at a dental practice. And I started out answering phones, learning practice management software, and doing all that upfront work. And then from there, it merged into, I think I want to be an assistant. So I got certified in expanded function dental assisting, did pediatrics for a lot of years, and then worked my way into office management and really fell in love with the insurance side of things, which is really kind of an oxymoron because who loves anything insurance when it comes to dental? But oddly enough, my brain is wired to really like a struggle. And so dental insurance is an immense struggle, and I have found a way to kind of help not necessarily break it, but find a way to work with it so that we have advantages and that we can get more money into practices so that you're not writing off so much and help to, make it to where insurance is a little bit easier to understand. So today we hope you guys take, anything from the seminar. We hope that you become empowered to want to learn more about how your practice is set up with insurance and to know that you can play the game and that really insurance is a game and it's one that you have to be aggressive with. With that, I'm going to jump right into our topics. Today, we're going to be understanding how PPOs impact your practice, the challenges and the opportunities. Insurance free, is it right for me? There's a big trend right now on dropping insurance and some practices really wanting to go fee for service. And I'm here for them. So I think there is a time and a place for dropping certain insurances. But the reality is it's not something you can do just immediately. So it's definitely a step-by-step process. Negotiating PPOs, which is really the heart of what we do. So we want to help you guys understand that process so that you guys are feeling empowered to either do it on your own or to reach out and ask professionals for help. And then how we play that game and we win for you. And of course, we'll be doing that Q&A at the end. So let's jump into understanding how PPOs impact your practice. So one thing you really need to understand is that 76% of all dental patients last year had some sort of third-party payer, and 82% of all dentists are contracted with several major PPO plans. So we now have where the statistics are changing a little bit. It used to be back in 2020, the latest or the 2020 ADA statistic was there were less than 7% fee-for-service practices left in the United States. That number has increased. We are now to where there's 18% fee-for-service back into the United States. And that is because insurance has become increasingly more difficult and they are dropping their rates. There's things that these insurance companies are doing that really make us shake our head and really question, what's the logic behind these? But ultimately, we understand that being involved with insurance is because we want to help our patients receive the best care they can, and patients value those insurance. And that's why so many dentists are joining the PPOs. They need patients to help with overhead costs of running a business, and they're losing patients as a result of being out of network. For those practices that reside in the bigger cities, it's not uncommon to see a dental practice right across the street from you or in the same building as you. So we have this unique competition where if you're not in network, patients are being told by their dental insurance to find an in-network provider, and that the costs are immensely better if you are having your care done by an in-network provider. So consumers and PPOs of 82%, we have of 156 million Americans with private dental plans are getting those through their employers. So we know that with that benefit that, these benefit packages that employers are giving out, these types of patients value that. And we know these Americans with dental benefits are more likely to go to the dentist, take their kids to the dentist, and receive restorative care and experience greater overall health. But we also know that consumers want some sort of incentive in order to go to a dental practice. And you guys are fielding those calls on a daily basis. They're calling and asking, do you accept my PPO plan? Are you in network with MetLife? Are you in network with Delta Dental? And if you say no, the reality is that phone conversation usually ends and they're on to the next person on their list, and they're asking them, are you in network with our insurance? So PPO plans have that edge for those incentives. And then it's also not uncommon for patients to drive over 90 miles now to find an in-network provider. That's how much they value the in-network status, which is driven by the insurance companies. All right, so insurances, the challenges and the opportunities. So here in this topic, we're gonna talk about all of the struggles, the overly complicated on purpose, the secret of stacking, the most favored nations clause, and then credentialing struggles. So more than anything, we have this ginormous web of insurance, and understanding the web of insurance is key. But it's so complicated, fully understanding that web of insurance is really not feasible. And so I don't want anyone to be in on this and saying, well, I don't know this web. How am I supposed to know that? They have made it purposely this complicated so you cannot know it. So please don't feel as though you have not done, all the homework you needed to be doing in order to be up to date with all of these insurance contracts. It's just on purposely done this way. So all of the networks are connected one way or another. There's a lot of backdoor agreements, a lot of lease share agreements, and we have this ability now to, when you go and network with one, you are either directly or indirectly contracted, right? So we now have to understand the power of stacking. I'm sorry about that. So stacking contracts is a term that we use in our industry, and it's a way for you to get the highest fee schedule stacked to the top. And the reason why that is so important that you're stacking your contracts is because the most favored nations clause came into play several years ago. And this is not talked about. And so we really want to educate on this most favored nations clause. So the most favored nation clause is a product of shared lease agreements and allows insurers to bypass the fee schedule listed in the PPO contract in favor of the lowest reimbursement within their shared network. So, for example, MetLife is part of a shared network with several other insurance companies. Within MetLife's network, if one of the other insurance companies has a lower reimbursement for a particular procedure code, MetLife is able to bypass the original contract for the procedure code and reimbursement at the lower fee. So at any point in time, based on how your practice is contracted overall, those networks have the ability to look and see of all of those backdoor shared agreements, which fee schedule is going to pay the lowest per procedure code. So it's not unheard of when you get an EOB and you see that there are multiple different ways that EOB paid out. So it may be that the filling was paid through MetLife Direct, but the crown was paid through Dynamax, something to that extreme. So they've made it overly complicated. These backdoor agreements allow the most favored nations clause in, and without stacking your contracts, you will become victim of losing the highest fee schedule to the lowest fee schedule that they can attach to. And I'm going to get into that a little bit further as we talk about PPO negotiations, and I'll touch back on that stacking. All right, credentialing challenges. Credentialing has gotten extremely difficult as well, and it's taking forever. What used to take 6 to 8 weeks to become in-network is now not unheard of for it to take 16, if not even longer, weeks to get a provider fully credentialed, which can be a burden when you're bringing on new associates or if you're acquiring a practice. Having the allotted amount of time needed to get a provider credentialed is key. Another important part about credentialing is making sure that you know exactly what you're signing up for and understanding that there's multiple ways that you can be in network with a particular insurance company. Therefore, you don't want to just sign up. You need to know what you're signing up with to make sure you maximize your potential negotiations in the future. So credentialing the right way for the practice is going to lead to longevity, renegotiations, and then you can also find out what those hidden clauses are in those contracts. The time frame to be credentialed anymore, we are telling you guys it's going to take about 6 months to get fully in network with any particular plan. A lot of the direct contracts, we can get you in network with them. If it's a state-specific plan, they're still usually around that 6 to 8 week time frame. But if it's a third-party contract, such as an umbrella company, you're going to expect a full 6 months from when you become effective with the umbrella, and then for the umbrella to actually pick up all of the shared agreements underneath it. So it does take time, and preparing for that out-of-network time frame, if you need, is also key. Multiple provider NPI fraud. Now, I always sneak this slide into all of my presentations because I'm extremely passionate about education. Educate, educate, educate. And these are things that I had to find out the hard way when working in practices. When I was an office manager, I was trained from another office manager who may not have known everything that we're supposed to know, but the insurance companies also don't want us to know everything. And so whenever I come across a tidbit of information that I feel is extremely important, I always try to make sure I share it, even if it doesn't necessarily fit into the full topic of the presentation. But I always talk on NPI fraud because I see it almost on a daily basis. So NPI fraud is when the use of a provider's NPI-1 is being used by a different provider for the purposes of being in network for a particular claim. So where that can come into play is, say you're hired on as an associate and it's going to take 6 months for your credentials to get all the way set up with the networks. And so instead of you being out of network, the office may run a different type 1 NPI on your claims. It's usually the owner of the practices, so that all of the claims look as though one provider is doing the work and it's all in network. NPI fraud is a federal crime, which will put you in prison, and the fines are astronomical. So if you ever wanted to have a little bit of fun on a Friday night, Google some NPI fraud cases for dental, and it's kind of shocking. So we really want to make sure that the use of NPI numbers is being used correctly. And if there's any questions on that, to ask those questions, and we are more than happy to guide you through setting up NPI numbers, and then again, helping with any out of network that you may be dealing with because a provider is not fully in network yet. I'm not going to go into, a whole lot of detail on it. I just feel like it's important that we always have this conversation. So if you have specific questions about NPI fraud and you don't want to ask them in the chat, please email me and I'll be happy to reach out to you and discuss it further. All right, insurance free, is it right for me? Like I said, there's been a big push of a lot of practices calling and saying, you know what, I can't take the write-offs anymore. We're tired of working so hard and not getting paid. We want to drop all these insurances. And that's a valid comment, and it's definitely something we want to look at with all of our practices that are reaching out for help. It's a matter of figuring out, is it right for you at the time that you're wanting to make these big changes? So insurance free, is it right for me? As you may recall, 76% of all dental patients last year had some sort of third-party payer. Patients pay on average $366 per year per person, or between $15 to $50 per month per person for dental insurance. Okay. Most plans come with a max benefit between $1,000 to $2,000. And this statistic always grabs me. Only 2 to 4% of patients will exhaust their max benefit annually. So that right there is not helping the insurance companies feel like they need to raise that max benefit of $1,000 to $2,000, but we all know that that's not enough for most patients if they need major treatment. So overall, we understand why providers want to get out of insurance, because having a max benefit of $1,000 doesn't give you a lot of room for putting a bunch of treatment together for a patient. And we all know that patients don't love to move forward unless insurance is going to pay some part of it. So with that, we really want you guys to understand, what are your demographics? Who are the big employers in your area? How far out is your hygiene booked? How many new patients are you obtaining a month? And do you look at patients' coverage before presenting treatment? Because if that is something you guys are focused on, that is the determining factor that you are currently a very insurance-driven practice. So these are the things that we want to analyze and kind of look at when you come to us with that, hey, we're ready to drop insurances. Dropping PPOs is not an all or nothing decision either. Balance is about what PPOs work for your practice and which companies are not beneficial for your practice. So what we like to do is analyze all of the PPOs you've got, and then we can help weed out the ones that no longer make sense in your practice, increase the PPO reimbursements that are negotiable, and then start to work towards that insurance-free concept, but definitely do it slow. It's not something that we ever push for a practice to say, tomorrow, we're insurance-free, we're dropping all of our contracts. You got to make sure your office can sustain, and that's looking at a lot of the things deeper within. Your overhead costs and all of those fun things. So it's definitely something that we are embracing, but we want to make sure that we are helping you guys look at the big picture overall and really overturning every option in terms of, increasing reimbursements and understanding, if that most favored nation clause is just draining your guys' reimbursements, and we can reverse that. There's so many things that can be done first. And if you want to stay PPO, maybe not fully PPO driven, again, it's a balancing act, and we're here to help with that. Now the fun stuff. Okay, negotiating PPOs. Work smarter, not harder. And we say that all day long. Insurance is a game. They have made it complex. It's not fair that they have made it to the extreme that they have, but we want you guys to know that there are ways to play the game and that you can find improvements. So remember, 82% of dental practices participate with more than 3 major PPOs. Overhead costs are averaging 72% now, and the national average write-off is 45%. So when you look at those numbers, now we know why it's so important to negotiate. When you have overhead costs over 72% and you're writing off on average 45%, that math does not work very well. So it is extremely important why we negotiate. And now who negotiates? Well, most insurance companies negotiate. However, your state specifics and a few others, so your state specifics are going to be Blue Cross Blue Shield, Delta Dental, United Concordia is not state specific, but they hold the TRICARE contract for the military. That is a non-negotiable agreement as well. And then MetLife claims that they do not negotiate. However, MetLife has multiple ways of being picked up through other agreements, and we are seeing more and more negotiations open up with them. So I don't like to put MetLife in a category as non-negotiable, but a lot of our competitors will still say MetLife is non-negotiable. Umbrella companies do negotiate. So your umbrella companies are going to be Connection Dental, Dentamax, Carrington, Zealous. Those companies are negotiable, plus they're shared options. So that means there's multiple other payers that are a part of them that you can pick up through one negotiated fee schedule. Putting this all together and finding the right game plan for your practice is key to finding success. So I'm going to give you a real quick example of how negotiations can help a practice. So we're going to do simple math here. We have a $2 million dental practice that is 50% fee for service and 50% PPO participation. Of the 50% that has PPO participation, approximately half of the PPO networks will negotiate on rates, thus resulting in $500,000 of reimbursement revenue that can be negotiated. PPO negotiations tend to result in a 20% increase in reimbursements. The result is $100,000 of annual increase in revenue each year. So in 10 years, this can equate to $1 million annual increase in PPO revenue. It is extremely important that we do not sit on our insurance rates and just say it's too complicated, I'm not going to try to negotiate, because that is how the insurance companies continue to win. Okay? Now, in addition to PPO negotiations, there's also UCR fee schedule and coding analysis. Many practices are reluctant to raise fees or understand where their fees even lie in the market. By analyzing and updating a UCR fee schedule, practices tend to see a 5% increase in their fee for service revenue. So remember, we had a practice that was 50% fee for service, 50% PPO. 5% of $100,000 results in an additional $50,000 in annual revenue. So PPO negotiations and UCR annual increases can result in $150,000 annually for the practice. Now, again, this is just easy math. These aren't necessarily true numbers in terms of, a 50% practice, 50% PPO, but it is where you guys can visibly see the power of negotiations and understanding your UCRs. The ADA recommends that you update your UCRs annually and increase them anywhere from 3 to 5%. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do an overall increase on your fees. You can pick and choose which fees you want to, but they should be evaluated every year. Our company does a complimentary UCR analysis for anybody that works with us, so we can help you with that. And then additionally, you need to make sure that your fees are lying within the right percentile for your demographic. The ADA says a well-established practice should be between that 60th and 80th percentile, and a brand new startup should be somewhere between that 50th and 70th percentile. So make sure you guys know where your fees fall. And then if it's time for a UCR update, make sure you're not just waiting, because that's money that you're just letting sit on the table. All right, so why your UCR matters, I guess I already talked about that. But I do find it funny, this last little slide here where it says rule of thumb, see what Delta Dental pays you and double it. That used to be how people would help you decide on where your UCRs fall. Now, I certainly don't agree with this, but I just think it's super funny that that's what, the old timers used to say when it was, hey, we need to increase our fees. Well, take what Delta Dental gives you and double it. We all know that Delta has not increased their fees very much over the last 20, 30 years. So that's not a good rule of thumb anymore. All right, so how we play the game and we win for you. Insurance companies can lease and share their networks by working with umbrella companies. This means there is more than one way to get paid for a particular patient base. For example, Aetna leases its network out 6 different ways. It's actually 7 different ways now. And umbrella companies are a big part in understanding and playing that insurance game. So understanding a lease share agreement. I'm going to use Aetna as an example again here. And in the last slide, we said Aetna shares its network 6 different ways. So what does that mean? That means if your office is a network with Aetna, and I'm just going to say it's a network with Aetna directly, but you're also potentially in network multiple other ways through shared agreements. So what this slide means is that Aetna shares to Dynamax, it shares to Connection, DHA, Guardian, Mavericks, which is also Zealous, and Premier Dental. Okay, so that means there are 6 other negotiable fee schedules at play that you can increase your Aetna reimbursement with if you're not happy with the increase you're getting directly from Aetna. Now, that doesn't mean that it's as simple as that, but that is exactly how this process starts, is understanding where you can get a higher reimbursement from, and then determine if the pros and the cons of making a contract change are going to be worth it for your practice. So you would start this by getting proposals if you're not a network with any of the other shared options that we're listing here. Or if you are a network, compare what your Connection fee schedule is to Aetna's fee schedule. And if there's a 20% increase right there, then it may be a valid option to jump ship from Aetna direct and move it over to a lease affiliation. So there's a lot of steps that are involved in this, but this is the starting point to understanding how multiple different payers can help you increase reimbursements in your practice. Here's an example of an umbrella list. This is just showing you that umbrella companies have multiple different payers associated with them. So you heard me talk earlier on about direct and indirect contracting. Direct contracting is going directly to Aetna and receiving a contract and fee schedule from their network directly. Indirect contracting is going through a shared agreement or through an umbrella company. Now, shared agreements and umbrella companies are 2 different things, and it does get confusing. An umbrella company is not insurance. It is a third-party administrator that will have a payer list just like this, and there's going to be multiple insurance companies on there, and you can see here, you can get Aetna, Emeritus, Blue Cross Blue Shield of some states, Cigna's on here, DNOA, Guardian, all of these other big payers are a part of this particular umbrella company, which means there's multiple ways to pick up other payers. Now, a shared agreement is like Aetna, where when you sign a direct contract with Aetna, it's also shared over to Emeritus, Guardian, and on down the line. So Aetna is insurance, but they also share their agreements. And then that means you are also in network with those shared agreements. So it gets a little bit confusing. If you guys need me to clarify a little further, please type that into the chat and we'll talk about that during Q&A. All right, so the power of stacking. Remember how I said stacking is super important when it comes to the most favored nations clause. And that is extremely important to understand. Any company you're working with can get you, really good negotiations, but if they don't know how to stack contracts, negotiating does you absolutely no good. So they go hand in hand. You have to negotiate and you have to stack your contracts, or you're never going to get the higher reimbursements in your practice. So how do you stack networks? All it is the process of opting in, opting out at the right times so that you are moving the highest paying fee schedule to the top of the pyramid. So I'm going to break it down just a little bit further here. I'm going to use Emeritus as an example. Emeritus is in a direct contract for this practice. The practice also holds contracts with Connection Dental, Principal, and Guardian. So these are Principal direct, Guardian direct, and then they have an umbrella company in the practice. Emeritus shares to all 3 of these companies, okay? It's been determined that emeritus has a higher reimbursement through one of these 3 other payers. Once you determine which one that is, which in this case it's Connection, then you are going to term out of emeritus, but you're going to keep principal and guardian direct. But because their fees are lower than Connection's, they're going to try to utilize the most favored nations clause. So you will be opting emeritus out of principal and out of guardian while remaining in network still with principal and guardian. And then that shifts Connection to the top of your pyramid, allowing that fee schedule to be utilized first. This gets very confusing, and it's meant to be confusing. So don't worry, we've got your back, and I'm more than happy to talk about this in the Q&A section here in just a little bit. All right, so how we play the game and we win for you. First and foremost, if you guys are wanting to do negotiations on your own, I support that 100%, but I want to teach you how. You need to identify, analyze, and understand. 90% of your 10 codes bring in 90% of your production. So when you are looking at your fees, it is important that you know what your top codes are. 10 codes bring in 90% of your production. So I do not want you to tear apart a fee schedule and be like, man, the implant fees are just awful, I can't accept it. But in reality, you do 1 implant a year with that particular insurance company, right? So if that's not in your top 10 code list, then it cannot be a major concern for you. Your first starting point in negotiating with the networks is taking your current fee schedule, understanding your top 10 codes, and having the network readjust the budget within your current fees. So you can go to them and say, these are my top 10, which they already know what your top 10 codes are. They data mine everything from you. But if you don't ask, they don't do. So you can go to them and say, I don't do implants enough. I want you to take from this budget, reduce my implant fee, and increase my preventative fees. You can do that with any codes you want, but you need to dictate that conversation with the insurance companies, or they won't do it for you. Analyze the impact of each company. So before negotiating PPOs, you should know how it's impacting your practice. How long have you been a network? How long has it been since you've received an increase? What's your current write-off? So that when you go to the network, you're empowered with reasons as to why you're asking for an increase instead of just asking for an increase. Here is our analysis that our company does. We do a free PPO analysis for all established practices. And this is just helping you guys see what it is that you want to get out of the networks. So you have an understanding of, is this a right move for me to either change contracts or find a higher reimbursement somewhere else? So when looking at this is, we don't put the name of the company that we've worked with on this slide, but I believe this is Cigna. Total production is looking at a 12-month time period for this practice. So in the course of 12 months, they produced $63,000, but they collected by the current PPO fee schedule only $36,000. So that's on average 58%. Okay, so pretty significant write-off here. What we do is we take every code that was submitted by the insurance company over the course of 12 months, and we put in the frequency of the code, your master fee schedule, so what you charge for the code, and then the current PPO fee schedule. Sorry, I don't know why that slide skipped. Then the current PPO fee schedule, which then calculates the write-off, okay? So here, for example, we have an exam. 85 of them were done. The office fee is $72, but the current PPO fee is $33. They're writing off $39 every time they do that code. We then do all of our negotiations up front, and we find better fee schedules that are approved for your practice, and we input that information right here. So the new fee schedule that we found is going to reimburse $43, dropping that write-off down to $29, which is giving them, over the course of another 12 months at 85 exams in that 12-month time frame, an increase of $850. And that code is now reimbursing at 60% on average. Okay, so we do this with every code. So it's a code by code analysis. By finding a better reimbursement for this network, we were able to increase this fee schedule by 20%, giving them an increase over the next 12 months of $12,700. So this is where the working smarter, not harder comes into play. By doing the same production you've always done and negotiating better fees, you can increase your reimbursement significantly. So what was being reimbursed on average 58%, falling right into that national average write-off range, is now reimbursing at 78% on average. So that's a visual that we want you guys to have and to understand, so that you can take the facts back to the practice and really determine, do we want to stay in network? Do we want to make a network change? What are the pros and cons of this? What's it going to take to get to the next step? Understanding how PPOs work is also important. There are many different ways to contract with one insurance company. So understanding how each insurance company affects another company is key to your success. And that goes back to those whole shared agreements. When you go and network with Guardian Direct, but you also go and network with Aetna Direct, those two are shared networks. They dual share, so they share back and forth to each other. They can see exactly what the other is giving out for fees. You're making it harder for you to get increases by being duly contracted with the same networks. And all too often, we see practices are overinsured with contracts. You don't need this contract because you can pick everything else up through a shared agreement through this contract. So simplifying how these PPOs work in your practice can help lead to much greater success and less frustration as you guys move forward. And why PPO advisors? Well, we are a company that works with only dental. So we're not spread thin on all the other avenues. We solely only work with dental. All employees here have over 15 years of dental experience. They all come from a practice, and they know exactly how you guys are feeling, and the overwhelmedness feeling, how the insurance companies treat you. They've been in those same situations. We have a vast knowledge of PPO trends. Our reputation with the networks is top-notch, which is important because there's many competitors out there that may not get to actually negotiate with networks because they've been closed off. There's a lot of bad eggs out there, and just make sure you're comfortable with who you're working with by asking the right questions and making sure they know what most favored nations clause is, and stacking, and all of the things, so that you know you're getting the full benefit of all of the tricks and uses to get those higher reimbursements. And we are the only company that offers a risk-free PPO analysis. So we want to make sure that we can educate first. So just like CareStack, we're all about education first. We want it to be very transparent education. Nothing is hidden, nothing is a surprise. We want to break it all down, code by code, insurance by insurance company, and then go over the risks and the rewards to making any changes, because you are dealing with insurance, and it's extremely important that you understand those risks and you understand what it's going to take in order to get to higher fees. And having someone with that ability to lay it all out and take that risk up front is extremely important, and hopefully then makes that process of wanting to move forward with the scary insurances that much easier for you guys. And last but not least, this is how you guys can get in touch with me directly. All of our information here is listed below, so you can email info@PPO Advisors, our direct phone line, and then of course visit us on the web if you ever want to read any of my blogs. Or we also have a client form that you can fill out if you're wanting more information. Insurance is hard and it's overwhelming, but it can be easier with the help of PPO advisors. And I tell everyone that I would much rather talk to a dental office than an insurance company. So if you guys have questions, and even if you're not a client of ours, please don't hesitate to reach us and just ask those questions. That's how you learn. So we're here for you any step of the way, and we're excited to be a part of this great series with CareStack. So I appreciate, again, all of the time you guys have given us. So I will open it up for Q&A. I'll go ahead and stop my screen share. Kelsey, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome. So much information. So we have one question that came in so far. It's from Natalia. She's asking if you could repeat the insurances that are non-negotiable.
Yes, absolutely. So the non-negotiable insurances are your Delta Dentals, Blue Cross Blue Shield, except for the states that are DNOA states. So DNOA states are Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Minnesota. There's 5 of them. Illinois is another one. DNOA is picked up through multiple shared agreements or through a direct agreement as well. So DNOA states can have their Blue Cross Blue Shield negotiated, but most of the states fall into a non-DNOA state. MetLife is one that is really bad with negotiations, but we have been seeing improvements. And then United Concordia, the TRICARE contract, is non-negotiable.
Awesome. So that's the only question that we had. So we can wrap up a little earlier if you're okay with that. Oh, we just got one more. They always pop in whenever I say that. It's like,
That's okay.
Okay. Natalia's actually responding. She says, I'm in New Jersey and I'm purchasing a practice in 2 weeks. Thanks for your help. So just like,
Oh, wonderful. Very good. So as you go through that acquisition, if you're closing in 2 weeks, you're probably out of network, and that's okay. So don't let the out of network fear be an issue. We can help you through a process of that. So even if you are just wanting to chit chat, we can help you understand that out of network transition period for you. But please avoid that NPI fraud, because that's where we typically see it come, as in acquisitions.
absolutely. We have one more question from Harsh Patel. They're wanting to know, have you seen Delta Dental sending checks directly to patients and some to providers? Why is it so?
Yes. So if you are an out-of-network provider with Delta Dental, the check will always go to the patient. But if you are in network with Delta Dental and you're seeing some checks go to the patients and some go to the practice, it's typically an NPI-2 issue. NPI-2 identifies the billing entity of the practice. So that's the billing location. If you do not have your NPI-2 on the claim form, the checks will sometimes go to the patient because they don't know how to process the claim correctly. So if you are an LLC, PC, any sort of organization other than a solo proprietor or whatever that one checkbox is on your W-9, then you have to have a type 2 NPI. Almost all dental practices are an LLC of some sort. And so not having that type 2 NPI will cause claims issues.
Okay, perfect. All right. So where do you start the conversation to negotiate fee schedules when calling into insurance companies?
Perfect. When you call into insurance companies, first and foremost, ask to be transferred back to the United States. So you want to talk to an onshore representative. When you talk to offshore, you typically never get anyone with the level of access for negotiation. So start the conversation with, I need to be transferred onshore. Then once you get through to someone, you'll say that you're wanting a negotiation or you're wanting to review your fees, and they will redirect you multiple different times. They'll usually hang up on you at least once or twice. So you're going to have to be consistent. You will be with provider services. So that's the network you need to get to, is provider services within each insurance company. And then document everything, who you talk to, the time of day, get a ticket number if they offer them. United Healthcare does ticket numbers. I swear they're never valid. So good luck with that. But you have to be persistent. So these networks don't want to give you increases. And oftentimes, if you don't get to the right person, they'll just say there are no increases available. So be persistent and call multiple different times.
Okay, great. All right. That is all I have at the moment. I put the email address for PPO advisors in here if you'd like to reach out with any additional, more specific questions about their services. And then I also dropped in the CE verification code into the chat as well, so that you can complete everything through CE Zoom to get your credits. And I think that's it for tonight. That's all I have for questions. Is there anything else from you, Shelly?
No, thank you guys so much. I always love the opportunity to educate, so I'm excited to hear from everyone.
Awesome. Really appreciate your time. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you guys.